Hello and welcome to another episode of Reimagine the North with Alex Mackenzie. That's me. Today we have a very special guest. Excited to have this guy in here. He's an entrepreneur, a businessman, philanthropist, a heart and soul of Prince George. Please welcome Johnny B. John Brink. How you doing, man?
Thanks, Alex. Nice to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you.
Yeah.
So, John, you were originally from Holland.
Correct.
How did you end up in Prince George?
Interesting question. So, put it in perspective, I was born November the 1st, 1940.
Yeah.
So my 85th birthday will be in another month from now. And so that was during the war years. The war started in early 1940. And so we were liberated by the Canadian Army, April the 12th, 1945. And as a 5-year-old, it made such an impression on me that I knew once I grew up, I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada.
Yeah.
And that always stayed with me. So I had two dreams. The one dream was to go to Canada. The other dream was to build my own lumber mill.
Right.
And I did both of them.
Yeah, very successfully, might I add. And how'd the lumber dream come? Was it the lumber that saved you guys in the war?
No, how that came about is my grandfather was a master carpenter. Although I never knew him, he died in his early 40s.
Yeah.
But I saw some of his works, churches where he built, all the amazing woodworking that is in those. So he was top. That's where I have the feeling trades then were looked up high.
Right.
Now a lot of times where people look down on it, it's not so. Trades are at the same level as docs are and lawyers and all the other ones that we see having a specialty that is unique and different. So that made the impression on me. That always stayed with me. And then my dad worked in a small lumber manufacturing plant, and I spent my time. I was not successful academically. I failed grade 3, I failed grade 7 3 times.
Right.
So they said, what are we going to do with this guy? And so a lot of people said, send him to the mentally challenged school. They said, no, we're not going to do that. So at 12 years old, 12 and a half, my dad had a friend that had a furniture factory, so they sent me there, and I got a job. The idea was to, obviously I was not smart enough mentally to, for a lot of people thought, including my teachers.
Right.
He said, no, John is not going to amount to much, but he'd be probably good at working hard with his hands.
Right.
So my parents didn't believe that, obviously. They were very beautiful people, and they always believed in me. So I went to the furniture factory. I loved it. And then...
you went to where, sorry?
To a furniture factory.
Furniture
and worked
factory.
there
Okay, yeah.
then, at 12 and a half years old.
Yeah.
And with the idea of making me a furniture maker.
Right.
And so that stayed with me. And then...
What was the first piece of furniture you built?
Well, it was a furniture factory that made mainly house cabinets and bedroom furniture, and we did components of it. So I was on the factory where they did legs and they had to sand them and do all that kind of stuff. But I liked it, and I always paid a lot of attention to it because I loved lumber and lumber manufacturing already then. And so... so that then came to the point that still the idea was in my mind of going to, Canada and then building my own lumber mill. I wanted to, obviously, academically, not a success story necessarily, but I wanted to prove to me more than anybody, I was just as smart as the other kids that grew up with me that went to college and universities, that I could do unique things myself, and in order to do that, my dream was to go to Canada. I did that when I was 24 in July of 1965. I wanted to start with nothing. I had 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and then when I arrived in Prince George, I counted my money at least 3 times. I had $25.47, but I couldn't speak the language, didn't know, so didn't have a job. And it started as a cleanup man, and then a lumber pilot, and then went forward from there.
Amazing, dude.
I came here in July of 1965.
And how did you end up Prince George? Because is that where you originally came right into, or did you start in the Lower Mainland? Or
Yeah, good question, Alex. Is that I knew that if I wanted to do lumber manufacturing, I had to go where the trees are in my mind. It's British Columbia. And
Right.
so I flew into Montreal,
Okay.
and then I took the train across Canada. 4 days, 5 nights. My God, that is a long way.
Did you go through when you saw the trees in Manitoba? You're like, maybe stop here. Let me out for a minute. I'll do a survey.
No, I want to go to British Columbia.
All the way.
All the way. So I came in, arrived in Vancouver, went to the immigration office, couldn't speak English, obviously, and didn't have a job, didn't know a soul. And fortunately, there was a German fellow, I could speak some German. Told him what I wanted to do. He said, go to Prince George. That's where they're building all the sawmills, all the pulp mills, and all the other kind of things.
Yeah.
So I did. And the bus to Prince George, I think it was 10, 11, 12 hours or so, Greyhound, close by here, a couple of blocks away from us, and came off the bus. And as I said, I had a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, $25.47. And then the initial job that I got is cleanup man.
Right.
So I walked all the way from downtown Prince George to, the mill side. It was an hour and a half every day, going there and coming back.
Wow. That's
hour and a half back.
Yeah, not too bad in the summer, I guess, but wintertime.
Yeah, so it was then when I started in September. Initially, I stayed there, and I was promised a job at the mill in the BCR side, and so there was an old cabin they had brought in. There was no lights or anything. They just hauled it in there, and I slept in that for a couple of weeks underneath my raincoat. And every morning I would go when the mill started, and somebody would not show up, and I'd get a job. But it took a long time before I finally got a job. Somebody didn't show up, and then I got a job as a lumber paddler.
That's amazing. There are 2 things I want to touch on there. One of them, you mentioned how trades didn't used to be looked down upon. They were more held up. When do you think that started to change, and why?
I think that still is substantially the case even in Europe, in Holland in particular. When I came here, it was looked down on, saying, I'm a lumber pilot, or I'm working in a lumber mill, and saying, but for a career, that then was not looked at as career really, and we didn't do much on training. Hence, to me, that always has been important, and for us to be collectively successful in Northern BC in particular, where we have so many resources, not only lumber, but also mining and all the other things, we have to do more adding more social and economic value to the resource, meaning we need skill sets in specialty areas that we need, but we didn't have much training. College of New Caledonia is good. Yeah. I've been always very involved in that, and obviously, that about 30 years ago or so that I felt so strongly about it, then we had to expand or extend, the training skill sets. Hence, I helped them with the building next to it.
Yeah, they got a new building put in there, right?
So and they named it the John A Brink Trades and Technology Center. I've always believed in that. I still do today. I still think that that's a major issue. Yeah. Although the college is doing well, we can do more. And then I was very involved in the University of Northern British Columbia, and another part that I was a believer in, got very involved in it, to have a freestanding university.
Right.
And I was a writing president at the time that we did that, and we just put the pressure on Victoria. Victoria is the capital for the people watching us from around the world, maybe, of BC, and that's where the politicians are. And most of the population is south of Hope. And then the North, relatively speaking, doesn't have overly much influence politically. Right. So we really had to put pressure on to spend and allocate money for training, and hence the University of Northern British Columbia. We wanted a freestanding university. And so we had to fight the battle, and we got it.
Yeah.
So now we have to go further. I've been working very, very hard on trades and technology, excellence, this college of excellence, I call it.
Yeah.
That we should now have in Northern British Columbia for training trades in particular. For where do we go from here? With all the resources that we have.
Are you thinking something like akin to BCIT, but a northern version?
Correct.
Okay, yeah. So we could offer more trades programs up here in the north.
Absolutely. That's the objective.
Right.
And it attracts people more to the north because the north is beautiful to live, rather than in the concrete jungle of, the lower main. I love Vancouver and all the other kind of things, but it's if it takes you an hour and a half to get to work driving, then that's a long way to go.
Yeah, you got like a 5-minute drive from here to the gym after this.
That's when, if there is a red light. If not, then it's only 3 minutes. And you say, oh my God, it takes a long time.
Be there early.
Yeah.
Time to stretch first. That's awesome.
Exactly.
So over your years, what have you noticed about Prince George that's changed?
So when I came here in August 1965, it was considered to be a boom town.
Okay.
Was lots of money was invested.
Because that's right when the mills were getting built. Is that right? The pulp mills?
The pulp mills in the early 60s. There were Intercontinental, Prince George Pulp, Northwood now, and Noranda and other ones invested in pulp mills, and then sawmills were expanding. Up to the 1940s, 1950s, Alex, we used to have up to 800 sawmills in the Prince George region. How did that look? Well, those were small little mills that were in the bush, and so they would manufacture in certain areas, and then after they had cut the timber in that area, they moved to a different location. And then government policy changed that they wanted to attract pulp mills, and they needed chips. And so then the mandate became that if you wanted to have access to crown timber, then you had to produce close utilization, meaning you had to debark, recover chips, and then lumber out of the logs. And so then it changed. The sawmills that had access to timber, they started selling out, consolidating, and the number of sawmills minimum became much less than they were from the 800. And that started likely late 50s, early 60s. And so subsequently, the pulp mills were operating, the sawmills were doing well, but not as well as they could do. And even up to the late 50s, early 60s, when a study was done in regards to, we have beautiful timber here.
Right.
The best in the world. I spent time in Holland and in Sweden. Our timber is as good as it is in Sweden, in this region. Very similar, actually.
Yeah. What do you think cause of that? Like similar climates, or
quite similar in a way, but when I first came here in 1965, I stood by the burners. They had these burners
those beehive burners
to burn all the residuals, and I could not believe the amount of fiber that went up the chains going into the burner. And in fact, even a study was done in the late 50s, early 60s, and saying, how much do we recover from a log in terms of lumber?
Right.
25%.
And the rest is all scrap, 75% going up the beehive burner.
Up the beehive burner or being wasted. Then obviously they started doing chips and pulp, and to a certain extent but still we did not recover what we should recover, and not even today we are, in my opinion, that we can do much, much, much better. Hence, I'm an advocate of value-added manufacturing. Too much of the timber is controlled by too few companies. It consolidated over time to where Up to 2000, in early 2000s, we probably had 3 or 4 or 5 companies that controlled
all the
80% of all the timber.
Oh wow, that's crazy. Yeah, it's starting to become like a bit of a monopoly.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was. And then now, obviously, what has happened since that time, a number of things. Pine beetle pandemic, destroyed probably 30%, 80% maybe of all the pine in northern British Columbia, and probably up to 1 billion cubic meters of it was cut and then cut into lumber. And raising the volume being produced, and then after it disappeared, it was obvious that the amount of what they call annual allowable cut, how much
AAC,
timber can be cut and still maintain the volume over the longer term, so was reduced substantially. Other things happened. Policy.
I heard that that's like one of the leading causes why the pulp mills are shutting down, is because the AAC got lowered.
I don't quite agree with that, actually, but some people speculate to that. So I believe that, what we have in the province of British Columbia, we still have annual allowable cut of around 65 million cubic meters because of policy, governments that are involved, and not getting too political, but say what we have in British Columbia, every 4 years we got an election.
Right.
We either elect somebody on the right or on the left, and then from there and then we appoint a new ministers of the different portfolios, including forest, and usually they have no experience or very little experience, and then from there and have new ideas, and then 2 years later they switch the ministers, and then you have somebody else again. So what it lacks is, and I've said that for a long time, is that we have to have a strategic plan as to what do we do with the forest in British Columbia, how do we attract entrepreneurship, how do we attract capital, and then in order to do that, there has to be prediction in terms of what is the policy going to be in the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. Rotation can well be, depending on how far north you are, around 50 to 60 years, depending on how it's like a farm. Right. If you don't, take care of the farm and doing intensive forestry or intensive work on making sure that you got the highest volume per hectare, then or whatever you're growing, then it will just be wild. And that's where we are in British Columbia. Not enough is done about it. Policies are not consistent with attracting entrepreneurship or capital. Hence,
and do you think that's a lack of is it a lack of education, like people not knowing what to do, or do you think it's people have a vested interest in not doing certain things?
There are entrepreneurs. I'm an example of that. There are people that are willing to invest in lumber manufacturing, and so there are markets for it. What it lacks is predictable policy. That where we are today, hence a lot of companies that are very dominant in the forest industry, particularly in northern British Columbia, but also in other places. What comes to mind is Canfor, West Fraser, Interfor, Western, number of Intalco, some of the larger ones. Mm-hmm. A lot of them have left or substantially left. Canfor has made it public that they are leaving for all intents and purposes British Columbia, so they have invested in Sweden, right. and so in the U.S. Southeast, southern yellow pine is the main species there. West Fraser, substantially the same. Interfor and all the other ones, Stalco, and on and on and on and on. So capital has left or is leaving. And you believe that's due to policy change? So you think these companies are too afraid? Lack of policy.
Okay, so they're too afraid to make a large investment in the region and then have a policy change and then they lose their investment? Is that the idea?
Yeah, so that if the policy is not consistent of predictability in terms of access to in this case, fiber or resources or whatever. It applies right across the board. It's not only on lumber manufacturing, but also in mining. How do we stimulate adding more social and economic value to our resources? Or do we just harvest it, put it in boxcars or in containers, ship it to wherever?
Do you think, you mentioned earlier that there used to be like 800 small, we call micro mills throughout the place. And now every kind of thing's kind of conglomerated into 5 different large players.
Gradually over the years.
Do you think that would steer people away? Because I know, like as an entrepreneur myself, one of the biggest things I look into is like the barrier to entry to the business. So there's a lot of options now through digital platforms that have a very low barrier to entry, right? Like you can, pardon me, you can start like a drop shipping company where you don't even have to make an investment. You make a website and then you take a product from a factory, put it on, and then it'll ship direct from the factory, like they call it DTC, direct to customer, and you don't even have to pay for that product until you sell one, right? So you buy one, you go on my website, you click buy, you buy it for $30. I have a deal with a factory, I get it for $15, then the factory just ships it directly to. So that barrier to entry is really low.
Sounds like Amazon.
Yeah, exactly. That's like the whole stick, man. That's the whole thing. So then you can get into those businesses very easy, is where like sawmills now, if these micro mills aren't available to be invested in, like it would take a very large sum of money to get into one.
Yeah, so those are the different models of business. So I have, give you a better idea about me, is that I have 4 silos. The one is lumber manufacturing, especially value-added manufacturing. Obviously, we're struggling there because of forest policies and all
policies we got to take care of.
Yeah, and then the other one is that, we're also in warehousing. Interior Warehousing is one of my companies. We're the biggest warehousing company in northern British Columbia. That is doing well.
What kind of products are warehoused in there?
We're warehousing for space mainly. We have people like FedEx, Amazon, we have Komatsu, and a number of larger companies as well as smaller companies. So that's what we do. And we have close to 4,000 square feet. And we adding 100,000 square feet per year, and we are full.
Wow. Do you guys run logistics for that, or is that outsourced?
No, we do logistics and distribution as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. So if you were to warehouse a product there, and then I needed it shipped somewhere, you guys would ship it?
We would either ship it or we would coordinate the shipping of it. So that's what we do. That is the one silo that, so we have lumber manufacturing, that is dimension lumber, as well as value-added manufacturing, and that includes marketing and a number of other things that are associated with it. We work very closely with First Nations and looking at growing and expanding at some point.
Yeah.
The other one is warehousing, distribution, logistics, as I explained. The other one is real estate, residential, commercial, and industrial. We're probably the largest residential developer. We have 3 subdivisions. We do commercial. We're doing a fairly major commercial development at Foothills in North Chaco, one of the larger ones, probably going to be 3 times the size of Spruceland.
Oh,
it will become the new commercial center of Prince George in the region.
Wow.
And then we do subdivisions, and then the other one is that we do industrial. We probably control close to 150 acres of industrial land in the city of Prince George, and still building there to expand the industrial side. The other one that they do is, so those are the 3, and then the other one that I do is media. I'm an author, I'm a presenter, and then I'm very active as a podcaster as well. And then looking at building a platform, that is the next step in our media side.
Yeah, and then in your spare time, you're doing bodybuilding.
And then I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America.
That's unbelievable, Johnny.
Yeah.
You know what? I was telling one of my friends, I was interviewing you, and I was saying, I just can't believe the pace you put up at your age. So you're what, almost 85 years young now?
85 years young in 30 days. So yeah, November the 1st.
Yeah. And this is your second podcast today already.
This is my second podcast today, yeah.
And you've been very successful. What keeps you going? Like, how do you get up every day and because your output is higher than most 20-year-olds.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
How do you
how do I do it? ADHD.
ADHD, that's your superpower. Yeah. You just can't. You're just always focusing on something. Did you learn? So would you say like you've just learned how to aim the ADHD?
No, I never knew I had ADHD until I was, so let me see. So I bought a book here in Prince George. I knew I was different. Why am I, who am I was always a struggle with me.
Because you said you struggled with school early on, right?
Oh, yeah, that was a disaster,
Yeah,
so
common with ADHD.
I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. And people say to me when I do presentation, I talk about that, and they say, does it still bother you that you failed grade 7 3 times? I said, it does. Every day. Every day I think about it. I should have left earlier.
Johnny, I think we found out why you work so hard. You're still hanging on to this grade 7 failure.
I should have left earlier. I wasted 3 years.
Oh my God.
Anyway, so that then being said, so then the other part is that, as I said earlier, it was in 1997.
Yeah.
I was here already for 32 years. I was successful in the lumber side and did a number of other things. And people said, oh, you're so successful. And I didn't feel that way.
Right.
I thought I had failed.
And where did that come from?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah. So then I walked into a bookstore, Books on 3rd.
Yeah.
I picked up a book, Driven to Distraction. I have no idea why I picked it up. And I stood in the store, I looked at this book, I opened it, and the more I saw it, I said, oh my God. It was about ADHD and dyslexia.
Yeah.
And I said, oh my God, that's me. Written by Dr. Hollywell. And he is a medical doctor, he's a professor, has a PhD, is a recognized global speaker on the issues of ADHD and other issues related, including dyslexia. And he is both ADHD and has dyslexia.
Yeah.
And so when I picked up the book, and I still have it, I wrote in the book, I have it in my studio actually, the actual book, I wrote in it in Dutch, because I was ashamed of it in a way, because it was suggested then that that was a mental disorder of some description.
Right.
And so I wrote in the book, now I finally know who I am. And so that kind of changed my life. So then that was in 1992. So I already was, then 52 years old. And so then the more I looked at it, Alex, and Googled it, the more I started understanding and saying, it's a superpower.
Yeah.
And so I went to my doc, that had been our family doctor, delivered our 2 daughters, and was a personal friend. And he said, hey, John, why are you here? I said, I think I got ADHD. And we checked it out, I do. And so, so that started to clear up my history as to why. And then the other part that I had challenges with is that I was not a very good communicator, right. Didn't have the self-confidence, and still part of who am I? And then in 1990, an ex-sister-in-law of mine said, why don't you come with me to a Toastmasters?
Right.
I said, Toastmasters, what's it all about? She said, what's communication skills? I said, are you going to ask me questions? No, just sit down and watch, and so I did. And then in the middle of the meeting, somebody said, hey, John, tell us all about you. I said, oh my God, I'll never go back here. But I did. Yeah. I stayed there for 10 years, became a distinguished Toastmaster. And then that part helped me in terms of communication skills. It gave me the confidence. But the other part that it did, that I knew it became clearer the uniqueness of ADHD and dyslexia. So ADHD in particular, I'm very good at communicating.
Right.
I wasn't then because I had lacked confidence in who am I. And then the other part, I was always very good at numbers.
Right.
And so I was a very good writer, but not a good reader, hence dyslexia.
Yeah.
And the combination of all the above. So it became clearer to me that neurodiversity issues are global, much more frequent than most people even thought about. Now, for people that are watching this podcast, is that if they go to the On the Brink podcast number 203,
yeah,
that's an interview with Dr. Halliwell. That can you believe it? And so him and me had a conversation.
Yeah,
He's
crazy.
the expert. I lived it. And so we talked about it in terms of, initially I thought it was a suggestion, maybe 6, 7, 8% of the population, maybe ADHD, much higher than that. So I said to Dr. Halliwell, from my experience, I thought it may be as high as 20%. He said, no, John, it's more than 25%. I agree with him. Male and female. Females portray it different than males.
Yeah.
But, and then the other part is that, the longer we talked about it, in particular, I had become very involved in associations and in industries of some sort or another, and meeting on board of directors a lot of times. And so I was surprised that, and I came to the conclusion that of the successful, and the operative is successful, entrepreneurs and business people, in my opinion, probably 50% of them are ADHD.
Right.
Dr. Halliwell said, no, John, probably 75%.
Yeah.
And I agree with him. So that then got me to the place where I said, I have an obligation to either speak about it wherever the opportunity presents itself. I still do that now.
Yeah.
And I wrote a book about it.
Yeah.
The ADHD Unlocked.
Yeah.
Very popular. So that kind of shows that from that point forward.
And you think that's what keeps you moving every day when you wake up?
Yeah, I say it's somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but but to a certain extent, it probably does to a certain extent, because I have a very good memory,
right?
And obviously I'm one of the most active podcasters probably in Western Canada.
No, I would imagine.
We're approaching. I'm only 10,000 short of 1 million subscribers
on YouTube. Yeah,
on
that's
YouTube.
Incredible.
So that means usually that's on YouTube, between Facebook and all the other ones and the other platforms. It could well be that globally up to 2-3 million different individuals are watching my podcast.
Yeah, that's exciting, man.
Amazing.
Unreal. And how long have you been doing that for?
I would say I started probably 6 years ago or so, Alex, where initially I did blogging, interacting with people. And then I started to work with Shaw in the setting that they have. And then COVID came, obviously,
right. Yeah.
and say, what do we do now? And I had this apartment, you've been there, and close to City Hall, and saying, well, how about turning that into studio? And then obviously what we see on television, you see television programs, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 different people from all over the world talking together and saying, that's the way to go.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do, and do it virtual. Then the other key to it was that podcasting is that, we started working with Alex from Podmatch, and so that bring individuals from all over the place together. So I've been doing that for probably 2.5 years now.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's amazing growth too in 2.5 years.
Yeah, and then we podcast on all kinds of different topics, all kinds of different ones. Nothing in particular special.
Yeah, just
and
anyone.
I like that. I do it with my books, I do it with the podcast. I'm a storyteller. That's who I am.
Yeah. Your newest book, $1 Million Communications, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. $1 Million communication skills. Is the point is that, and there's a picture, I don't have it with me here, but is a picture of me on the cover of the book, and then the billion dollar communication skills. It's not out how to become a billionaire, although you can if you wish. The opportunities are there, but it's more about what made them, the 6 or 7 that, and all people that we know, what made them successful, and what we will see is what really did it for them becoming an effective and good communicator.
Right.
And they may have had some of that, but when they developed it, that at the end became the trigger.
Yeah.
And then the amazing part about it, Alex, is that communication skills are the most important in life, in all kinds of different levels. If it is in family settings or in business or you want to get a job, communication skills critically important. It's not very well taught.
Right.
In schooling, and it's probably not some of the most important.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. It is definitely something that's transferable across all different areas of your life, right?
Exactly.
And it is interesting finding that, because there's a lot of people who are very successful at business, but then their family life struggle. And I always wondered that. I'm like, well, you can run this giant company. So obviously you're very good at, communicating and doing this, but then some people, a lot of them end up divorced. And I guess a lot of it might just be putting too much time into the company.
And that's another part that is very important from my perspective. And it's a good topic that you raised, is that, but a lot of people misunderstand that. They believe that they watch at somebody that appears to be so successful, right, and so successful financially and has everything that you can possibly imagine, is being in business, is that business is and can be very, very, very demanding, and it can be very, very challenging for families and relationships.
Yeah.
Simply because it is, you never know what it is, when it is, and how it is, and becomes very, very demanding. Hence, that a lot of marriages fail. Because of the demand of the businesses.
Yeah, well, I tell you, if I was married, I'd be divorced doing this comedy thing, because I keep risking everything on every tour. I have to produce these tours, and you have to put a lot of capital up front, and I will literally spend every dollar I have. I'm like, I will spend $100,000, put it all there, and I will have $100 left in my account, and I'll be there and be like, well, I hope we sell tickets,
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't know. And if I had a family or kids, it would be very, very, unthoughtful of me.
Yeah, because they would worry about you physically. You be gone a lot because you do travel a lot.
Yeah.
And for our people watching, obviously they already know you're a comedian, a very successful
and
one.
You're going to be one soon too. We're going to get you on that stage too.
I like it, so and preserving a sense of humor, extremely important, and to make fun of yourself, very, very important.
Yeah.
So interesting parts, and then, but as you already indicated, where you lay everything on the line. The same happens in business, and
I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurship is, right? I watched a thing on the kid who started Gymshark, and he was talking about, because he was like the youngest billionaire ever, and he said to get from like 10 million to 100 million, he's like, you have to take some very irrational swings, and you have to risk everything. And he's like, and you don't have very good data backing up the risk. So he's like, you just have to swing and hope.
And then from 100 million to a billion, much easier than the first step.
Right.
Why? Because of experience. You have the resources, but experience in particular. And because you wouldn't get to 100 million if it were not for the fact that you must be a good communicator. Yeah. You must understand your business. You must be good at numbers, and you must be a good writer, reader, all of that, and then building a team. You cannot do it alone.
Right.
And so, and develop all those skill sets is a challenge. And then once you get there, going to the next step, most people that have been very, very successful will always refer back to how it all started.
Yeah.
There's no question about that.
Yeah, and I think that experience thing you mentioned is a big one, because they always talk about how many millionaires have gone bankrupt, but I think it's your learning, right? And so you learn how to do it, and then when you go bankrupt, you're like, well, I know I have the blueprint now, and you can start again.
Yeah.
And then get going.
And the key foundation from my perspective is attitude. Avoid negative. I stay away from me.
Yeah.
And passion, whatever you do, give it 125%. I do. And then work ethic. I work harder than anybody. Even now, I usually get up at 5:30. I always make my bed, and I always think I'm late. And every day to me is a great day.
You beat me here, John. Like, you got to the studio before me, and I'm going to let you get out of here pretty quick, because you got to get to the gym, and I know that. And you've already done another podcast.
Yes.
So before I let you go, I want to ask you one real quick thing. What do you see for the future of Prince George?
Prince George is, I always say about Prince George, there's a huge, huge, huge potential. It will be successful, not because of the politicians, in spite of them.
Yeah.
And the reason for it is simply this, Alex, is that, and I've always felt that, we are in the best location in the world. You couldn't possibly design it better. We have the United States, one of the largest consuming markets in the world, south of us, Asia on the west side, Europe on the east side, and we have all the resources.
Right.
And all the things that we can possibly wish for are here. The key for us is recognizing that we have to be believers. And I find a lot of times that I've always believed that, right? That's why I came here. That's why I came off the bus with my $25.47 and my suitcase and 3 books, two sets. And when I was cleanup man, I then believed that this is the place.
Yeah.
And so it will be 250,000 people here, probably 10, 20 years from now. Yeah. And then gradually growing up, it will be the resources that we have. And the key for us now is to say, let's lay the foundation, because capital, and I said that, and when I made the commitment, for the building that they named after me 30 years ago, I said it's not capital that will be lacking, not entrepreneurship, not location, not access to all the resources that we have, not access to market. It will be access to a skilled workforce that will deter the capital to coming here to the north. Right. So I said it's critical that we go forward with that. We have the College of New Caledonia. We have the University of Northern British Columbia. Now we need a school of excellence where we focus on trades, not in different like BCIT, but where we can do the trades that we need. The biggest challenge for me has been in my companies, still is today, from day one. And I usually give presentations in young people in high schools, colleges, or universities, and saying the biggest challenge that I have then, I said, is people that I can pay $125,000 to. Yeah. And everybody said, oh, I do that. No, you didn't get the point here. The point is, what do you bring to me that justifies to me to pay you $125,000 in our company?
Yeah, and it's skilled work, trades.
That's what you need.
Yeah. Awesome, Johnny. Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And it's always great to catch up with you.
Thanks, Alex.
And, yeah, have a good gym
Good luck to you.
Yeah, thank you, Johnny.
Take care.